and get started if everyone's good with that. So hopefully you are all expecting to be here to talk a little bit more about ABM measurement best practices with me. If not, I'm sorry, but I would love you to stay regardless. So to kind of kick things off, by way of just a quick introduction. So my name is Brenda Zanotti. I am the Senior Customer Education Manager at Terminus. And anyone that's not familiar with Terminus, we're a software company that helps drive efficiency and success in go-to-market organizations through our account-based marketing platform. And I've been with Terminus for almost 5.5 years, which feels wild. I transitioned from a customer success role into a training and education focused role about 3.5 years ago. So now I really specialize in creating engaging and scalable training content for our customers to really help drive adoption and retention. And more recently, I've also started delivering more ABM focused educational content to our broader market through programs like our ABM certification. And prior to working at Terminus, I was actually the marketing manager at a B2B marketing agency here in Atlanta, not too dissimilar from the folks at Mojo Media. And I live here with my husband and our 2 dogs, who you might see behind me right here. But I'm really excited to be a part of this event and to talk a little bit more again about measuring success with ABM programs. Nice. Shout out to ATL. See some folks, hopefully some Atlanta folks on here. So quick agenda. The focus for today is really going to be looking at program measurement through both an account-based and a full lifecycle lens, which I'll get more into in a moment. But we'll start by talking about full lifecycle measurement and how you should really think about measuring an ABM program based on your business objectives and really the lifecycle stage of your audience or the segments that you're focusing on, which we really believe is the best way to go about it. And then we'll talk about just generally some things that make for good measurement and some things you should think about before launching an ABM program, or if you're already running an ABM program, some things you can use to really self-assess where you're at in terms of program maturity and really help you fill in those gaps. And then I'll actually dive into some program examples across that full life cycle to help get ideas for what type of metrics you should be working towards or looking at based on those outcomes you're looking to drive. And I'm also going to try to bake in time for Q&A at the end. So just as a reminder, I'm running the show today. So please, if you have questions, definitely use the Q&A box. I'll try to scan the chat as well if anything comes in, but I will leave time at the end to kind of go through as many questions as possible. And I believe I have some folks on my team and maybe the Mojo Media team on here as well. So if anything technical goes awry, I'll also keep my eye on the chat and try to take a few check-in breaks. But without further ado, let's get started. All right, so I would guess that most of you are familiar with a traditional marketing funnel, which is shown on the left-hand side of this graphic here. And really in that traditional model, marketing's role is typically to cast a wide net at the top and attract and convert as many leads as possible, move those leads or prospects through some sort of progressive nurture stream, and really ultimately transition them to sales to prospect into closed revenue. And the success of this process is typically measured by metrics like conversions, leads, MQLs. This was absolutely my life as a marketing manager before joining Terminus. And this funnel really does have its place still in modern marketing organizations, and it may even be the best way to drive growth in some companies. But over the years, there's really been this massive shift in the B2B buying process. So buyers are more educated, the market is more saturated than ever. And what we found is that what Forrester also has found really is that less than 1% of those B2B leads are actually turning into customers. And as a result of this shift, we're also seeing more and more businesses moving away from exclusively running lead gen or demand gen programs. And instead, they're adopting this full lifecycle approach that really blends both inbound or demand gen and account-based strategies, which is represented by the graphic on the right here. And in this model, marketing's job doesn't stop at the top of the funnel, right? So with full life cycle, sales, marketing, customer success are all working together to support the entire customer journey from initial brand awareness all the way through to expansion and retention. And really, this makes sense because one of the major underlying principles and key differentiators of ABM or account-based marketing is driving efficient and effective revenue growth, where really that goal is to progress opportunities and best fit accounts rather than driving a ton of lead volume that maybe doesn't even equate to revenue in the end or people you actually want to talk with. So ABM is really all about creating that surround sound experience throughout the customer lifecycle and really everywhere those accounts and people in those accounts are trying to engage with you or where they engage regularly. So that's why this full life cycle, multi-channel approach is really critical to the success of any ABM program, which is why I kind of wanted to start here. And really the account life cycle comprises 4 distinct stages, maybe 5 for post-sale, but it's awareness, opportunity creation, pipeline acceleration, and then also customer expansion and retention. And it's important to note that each of these stages really requires different strategies for how you select accounts, how you engage with them, how you work with your go-to-market teams, and ultimately how you measure success. And before I move on, what I would say is keep in mind that if you're someone that is getting ready to launch a program or has never done ABM before, or even if you're currently doing ABM, it's important to understand that you don't necessarily need a program running it to support every stage of this life cycle simultaneously. You know, your early programs should really be aligned to those primary business objectives that you're looking to drive. And you should really be adopting kind of this crawl, walk, run mentality when launching any new initiative, including an account-based marketing program. So to double click into this a little bit more, this graphic really breaks down the different engagement signals and key metrics or performance indicators you should be looking at or can be looking at for each life cycle stage. So I won't go into this in great detail. I do have a copy of this that I can pop into the chat before I move on to the next slide for anyone that wants to have a copy of this to take away. But I like this graphic because I also think it helps set expectations on what success really looks like at each stage. So in the awareness stage, as an example, or engaged accounts, as it's called here, you're focused on accounts that may or may not have had some early engagement with your brand. So the play here is really to educate the target market and get them interested enough to take that next step and to learn more. So from a measurement standpoint, you know, if these are accounts that haven't engaged with us much in the past, it's probably unlikely that we'll launch a new campaign and within 2 weeks, we'll be closing a ton of deals, right? That would be awesome, but maybe a little unrealistic. So instead, we're focused on driving outcomes that align more closely with that life cycle stage the accounts are in. So channel level metrics like impressions or clicks or chat conversations, as well as account level engagement signals like web visits and high value content interactions. And the ultimate goal would be to have them submit a request for a demo or a first call or something like that. So hopefully this is a useful asset for planning out kind of your own life cycle programs. And I'll be diving into some more specific examples shortly, but I'm also about to pop a link to this graphic in this post that I just linked to. There's a copy available to download along with some links to some other resources. So hopefully this is a good takeaway for y'all. All right, so I also wanted to talk a little bit about the foundational elements of a good measurement strategy. So think of these as 3 areas that you can really use as conversation starters or ways to help you self-assess where your organization falls in terms of measurement readiness or maturity. And the first is data, which is obviously paramount to being able to measure in the first place. And from an ABM perspective, we're talking about the data that you need to select and segment your target accounts. So basic things like firmographic or technographic data that you have in systems like your CRM or a marketing automation platform, as well as behavioral signals that will help marketing and sales prioritize their outreach. So website engagement, campaign responses, intent signals, stuff like that. And some questions you can really ask yourself to identify gaps or strengths in this area include, where does our data actually live and who needs it and where do they need it? So what systems do we need to pull this information from? What teams, including marketing and sales, need the data, and where's the best place to surface that data for them so that it's actionable? So for sales, that could be getting that data to them in a CRM or a weekly report to help drive efficiency. And you also need to understand from a data perspective how confident we are in its level of accuracy. And this can definitely be a challenge for a lot of organizations, ourselves included. Terminus struggles with this just like anyone else, but leveraging tools and working with your operations team to help create processes to drive data integrity and cleanliness can be huge to getting these programs up and running. And also just how well are our systems integrated? So I'm sure everyone understands the challenge of having data across a ton of disparate systems, and it can make drawing conclusions about overall program effectiveness super challenging. So really striving to have that single source of truth for measurement is key. And the second element here, which I really can't stress enough, is setting baselines. So understanding your starting points when you're launching a new strategy like ABM is so crucial to gauging your overall impact and your success. And really thinking about, taking the time to log your historical performance in key areas across that customer lifecycle, or even setting up control groups, which is a pretty common, A/B testing type of mentality, a pretty common practice in even traditional marketing programs, is super important to have at the start. And some questions to ask here would be, how are we measuring marketing's influence today? How does that compare to maybe our account-based programs? So, really anchoring your program performance measurement around those account level and pipeline and revenue-centric metrics. What KPIs are we going to measure against? And even what are our most successful channels or content or calls to action today? And finally, cross-functional alignment really plays into the success of all facets of an ABM program, including measurement. And really, most importantly, marketing and sales need to be communicating regularly and collaborating on that target account strategy for all of this to really work, right? So it's not really enough for marketing to charge ahead with an ABM program without involving sales directly, and because you really won't see the results that you're looking for. There's some questions to think about asking when you're assessing kind of where you're at in this area is, what does sales need from marketing? What does marketing need from sales? And really, how are we going to set expectations on the timing of our goals? What is our feedback cadence going to be? How often are we going to report on this? What data are we going to share, et cetera? So again, all of these are great things to kind of self-assess where you're at if you're running a program currently, or if you're thinking about running ABM at your business. All right, so getting into some actual program examples. Before I dive in, I also think it's important to understand the different levels of reporting that could feed into an overall ABM measurement strategy. And really the first is measuring against your overall business objectives that we talked about. So we should really be using this as our North Star in our measurement strategy. And these are critical business goals that you're trying to drive with ABM, and really kind of what your C-suite or your board probably cares about. So some examples of this could be pipeline created in a current quarter, or new logos won, customer retention, customer satisfaction score. And from a cadence standpoint, these are probably metrics that you're reporting on a quarterly basis. And the second area is program metrics. So these are really metrics that will show the success of individual programs and their overall influence on those larger business objectives. So this could be your overall ABM program, or even performance across different target account segments or audience segments in that ABM program. So some examples of metrics might be opportunities created, closed won revenue influenced, or even deal velocity. How quickly are accounts in these programs moving through our sales cycle? And these metrics are probably ones that you're looking at more frequently. So maybe on a monthly cadence, really depending on the length of your sales cycle that you're working with there. And finally, we have channel metrics. And these are really designed to help you understand if individual channels are creating ROI and engagement and are critical for iterating and planning your future programs. But I would say an important call out for channel level metrics is they shouldn't necessarily, they're important. We have to measure them, absolutely, to continue to make investments and optimize what we're doing at the channel level, but they shouldn't be used to evaluate the overall success of an ABM program. So a low click-through rate doesn't necessarily mean that your ABM program was a failure rather. But it could indicate that there are opportunities to optimize that channel to help drive those overall program and business level objectives. So ad click-through rate, chat conversations completed, pipeline influenced by direct mail are all examples of metrics like those. All right, so let's dive in and get to some actual program examples, starting with brand awareness. So using that customer lifecycle framework I shared on the first slide, I have a couple of examples to go over. And with each of these, we'll really cover, what is the purpose or primary business objective we're addressing? What is that program strategy and the program metrics that we'll look at after the program is complete to assess effectiveness? And what channels will we use to drive the program, and how will effectiveness of those specific channels be measured both, as the program is happening to optimize in real time, but also afterwards to drive those future investments. And when we talk about ABM, a lot of times it's in the context of creating more opportunities or driving more pipeline and revenue, but brand awareness is also a really important aspect of how you create pipeline, right? You need to drive awareness for your brand and the problems you're solving. And even, if you're trying to move up market or expand your market to grow and expand your business, you have to drive awareness in those areas of the market that you haven't penetrated yet. So there are companies out there that don't know your business exists, or they don't know that they have a problem that needs solving yet. So trying to get them to sign up for a demo or a call on cold outreach probably won't land well. I'm sure we've all experienced that. So in this program, when we say awareness, I know that can be sort of a fuzzy term, but what we're really trying to drive is engagement on target accounts, which might also be a fuzzy term, but our primary business objective or our primary metric would ultimately be account engagement. So we know we have a bunch of accounts that we're trying to sell into, and we need to determine what the signal or signals will be to show that they're starting to show some interest and that it might be the right time to reach out. So the strategy that we'll use here, since in this hypothetical scenario, we're a smaller company that's newer to ABM, is to work closely with our sales team and really leverage them heavily. We've identified our ideal customer profile, or similar to a buyer persona, this profile that we've created based on our most successful customers and what kind of common traits or characteristics they share. So we'll work with sales to identify 1,000 accounts that align closely with that ideal customer profile. And those are the accounts that sales will focus on selling to in this program. And since we're selling into businesses, again, that may not know about us, we're going to use top line engagement channels like display advertising, for example, and website personalization once we get those accounts onto the website, with the goal of driving them to educational, curated content that we've built that really demonstrates those proof points for why they might need a solution like ours, or really how even to identify that they have a problem in the first place. So as we look back kind of at the full program here, one of the things that we'll try to do is make sure that we're getting in front of those 1,000 accounts that we selected. So from a metric standpoint, account coverage is really important, particularly through a channel like display advertising, for example. We need to understand at a baseline, are our target accounts seeing our message? Are they aware of our brand? And website visits is actually another great metric for this program. So the ultimate goal, again, is to drive account engagement and get that message in front of the right people at the right time at your target accounts. So we need to be driving more high quality web traffic to our site. And we need to understand if channels like display advertising are having an impact. And then ultimately, we're also going to look at demo requests as a program metric. So that would help us understand, is this program helping us lead accounts into the next stage of the funnel, which would be to create new opportunities or pipeline, which we'll talk about more in a second. And from a channel perspective, total ad impressions served to these accounts really ties back to that account coverage metric, right? Are we actually getting in front of those accounts that we selected in the first place? Now, again, I have ad click-through rate here. Again, it's not necessarily a good program metric to understand, did this program work, point blank? But it is a great metric to understand, is our messaging resonating with these people? It's also a good correlation back to website visits. So if we see a big increase in web visits, but not a strong ad click-through rate in our advertising, we might be able to draw some conclusions that maybe our ads are sort of missing the mark and not helping to drive that traffic. But we also know that ads could be influencing people to come back to the website at a later date, even if they're not clicking through. And then also time on site is really important because we're looking to drive, again, more engaged, educated visitors back to the website. So understanding if visits, as a result of those efforts, visitors rather are sticking around once they land on the website and they're interacting with our web personalization pop-ups. They're spending more time on the content streams that we've created. And because really this is a new program for new business, we're trying to educate future customers, but we're also trying to educate ourselves on what's resonating with this audience, right? How do they want to engage with us? What messaging are they looking for? And finally, understanding what our top viewed most content is in that content stream will really help us understand what we can use in future programs and how we can create content that's a bit more targeted as we iterate. So this is an example from an awareness perspective of how the strategy will drive the KPIs that you measure, but also how the channels drive those KPIs that you want to be tracking against. So now that you sort of understand the flow here, I'll move through these other examples a bit more quickly. But for this one, I don't think I need to come up with a super clever scenario to introduce the opportunity creation phase, because in reality, we all need pipeline, and that's hopefully what we're all trying to impact at the end of the day, right? But specific to this example, let's say that our business is driving a lot of traffic to our website, but that traffic is not converting. And the folks that do convert, or maybe that we're sending over to sales as MQLs, are not being accepted. So sales is not happy with the quality of leads that we're driving through our marketing program. I'm sure we've all been there. That's sort of an age-old challenge, right? But from a business perspective, we know that we're ultimately trying to generate pipeline or new opportunities in these accounts. And because we know that we're driving traffic, but that the people that are converting are of a low quality, we really know that we need to narrow our program to accounts that are most likely to be engaged and interested right now, right? We only want to focus our efforts, marketing and sales, on people that are actually engaged and are actually in market. So we can really use, a variety of different data points to measure this, but some examples I have here are website engagement and intent data, or intent signals. So website engagement data will help us understand how accounts are actively engaging with our brand and our content in this moment. And then intent data, for anyone that is not familiar with that type of data source, is really going to look more broadly. It's typically third-party data that is used to help you understand if target accounts are searching for or are researching solutions and consuming content that are related to either your specific business and the solutions that you provide. It can also be used to track whether people are searching for your competitors, which can be a great signal of interest, or that someone's in an active buying cycle, even if they're not coming to your website. And ultimately, accounts that are either actively engaging with our brand or are potentially in an active buying cycle, or ideally both, are the ones that sales and marketing, again, should really be focusing all of their efforts on. So from an engagement strategy, because we're focused on a smaller list of accounts, and because we know we want to drive more high value traffic to our website for the right people, we're going to, again, run display advertising because it's a super important channel for increasing web traffic and also the quality of web traffic, because you can get more targeted in terms of who you're getting in front of. But we're also going to use LinkedIn advertising to get in front of people that we know are buyers and part of the buying committee, rather, in these accounts that we're going after. So those key personas, key roles that we know are crucial to our buying cycle. We're also, in this fictional scenario, going to use our website chat tool because it's, again, a great tool for increasing those on-site conversions and demo requests. And it really puts the power in the hands of the buyer to initiate that conversation or to learn more. So as we look back at the program, if our primary business objective was to drive pipeline or create new opportunities, we also need to understand how many total opportunities were created, right? And what the average deal size of those opportunities is, which is all objectives overall of running account-based programs, is to impact metrics like those. But we also want to understand, how are we converting initial meetings to opportunities? So looking at our demo to meeting opportunity conversion rate can be a great metric for an opportunity creation program. And then finally, as we look at specific channel metrics, obviously ad click-through rate and website visits are still important, but meetings or demos booked through our chatbot is also something that we want to look at. And if it's a high quantity of those conversations that are happening, we know that this is a successful tool for this strategy. But if it's not, then maybe it wasn't necessarily the most effective way to engage with our buyers, or maybe we need to look at optimizing that channel for better performance. All right, how am I doing on time? Awesome. So moving farther down the funnel here to pipeline acceleration. In this phase, we're focused on people that we either have an active or open opportunity with, right? So we know as a business that in this scenario, again, we're losing out on deals or deals are going dead at two critical stages in our buying cycle. After the first demo, we're seeing people drop off or they're going dark and they're not responding. And then we're also losing deals in later stages. We're losing out to competitors very frequently. So really, ultimately, our business objective, we need to figure out some way to keep people engaged and to make sure that they're choosing us over our competitors in late stage deals. So from a program strategy, we need specific content to really support those different stages. And we need a way to keep people engaged after the first meeting. And really, we also need to do a better job, it sounds like, of highlighting our differentiators from our competitors. So ultimately, we're going to create programs to support each one of our critical buying stages. So kind of a stage-based ABM play here. And from a channel perspective, we're going to run stage-based advertising, again, to support those individual messages across our different stages. But we're also going to have a sales email cadence running that, again, runs alongside our different marketing efforts that talks about the critical things at each stage. Really, again, our goal is to create that surround sound messaging, consistent messaging across multiple channels so that we're meeting the right audience with the right message where they want to engage with us. And really, to keep prospects engaged after that demo, we're going to send them, as an example, a direct mail piece that sort of leads them to that next stage and really helps them stay engaged with us. From a late stage standpoint, we can also create individual landing pages that are sort of kind of a competitive takedown page, if you will, that our sales team can use in those late stage deals we're losing out onto competitors so frequently. So when we're thinking about channel specific metrics in a program like this, we're looking to see, again, if people are engaged with us on our website but we're also tracking if sales emails are driving people to our competitive landing pages, what the most viewed content pieces are from those competitive landing pages, so that we can kind of double click on again for future programs to really understand, what's working, what's not, what can we repeat for success. And then also the direct mail influence on pipeline is going to be really important to show whether or not adding this direct mail piece is actually driving more engagement and helping to kind of continue to push people through the pipeline here. And then after this program is run, we'll also need to measure and look at deal velocity, or again, the average deal cycle length for these opportunities and whether we're shortening that. We're also going to be looking at how many overall deals we're closing, as well as the actual revenue dollars that were won, and then also ACV, or average contract value, for these deals, and whether we're seeing that number go up or increase larger deals in accounts that we're running these ABM programs to. All right, I do want to leave plenty of time for Q&A, so I'll move through these last two pretty quickly, but I did break out the post-sale lifecycle into two stages, retention and expansion, because I think they really involve different strategies as well as different metrics. So from a retention standpoint, let's say that we're seeing that our customers aren't sticking around as much with us after their first year, but we know that if we can keep them and retain them for a second or third year, that retention kind of skyrockets. So ultimately, that first year is really critical. And in this scenario, we've heard from both customers and our customer success team that users are really having a hard time proving the ROI of our solution. And we're also seeing that people that were working with these accounts are leaving or turning over their companies at a really high rate. So we're getting a new point of contact, and it sort of feels like we're starting from scratch and having to educate them and helping them see ROI all over again, which can totally kill a renewal deal. So we know that those are all critical things that we need to look at for this program. We need to educate our customers on best practices, help them see ROI, but also get more multi-threaded in these accounts so that when we do lose, a potential power user or our main point of contact, we're not in the dark on who we should be engaging with to keep the relationship strong. So one of the channels we're going to do is, again, display advertising. And you'll notice a common thread here, because display advertising can really be a super effective component of any ABM strategy that you're running. But in this case, we're running campaigns to existing customers. Again, LinkedIn can be a great channel for plays like this to get in front of specifically decision makers or specific individuals in these accounts, that sort of higher level persona that you're looking to engage in that conversation, that ROI conversation especially. We can also run email campaigns that showcase a lot of new educational content, like educational webinars or training courses, really interactive training opportunities that we've built to help our customers see ROI, to drive adoption of our product. So our overall business objective, or metrics that we'll look at here that we're looking to make an improvement on, are specific to gross revenue retention, or even overall retention rate, as well as things like customer satisfaction score, or CSAT. We'll also continue to look at things like account coverage to understand if our target accounts are actually seeing our message that we're putting out there. That's a metric that's just as applicable to customers as it is prospects. And something that you can also work with customer success on that's a little more subjective is understanding and tracking whether or not you're adding new contacts to the account to really broaden that account committee. And again, showing that you're getting more multi-threaded. And from a channel perspective, we again need to understand, is our messaging resonating with the right people? Are people actually engaging with this content? Are people attending webinars? And are they completing these courses that we've created for them? All right, so last but not least, our final example. Again, I'll move through this one a little more quickly. We will be sharing out slides once all of this content is processed in a few weeks. So no worries, you will have these slides after the fact, but this is really an area, as an example, that we know customers are happy, but we're trying to sell new products or services into them, right? So in this example, we're launching a brand new product. It speaks to a new type of buyer in our existing accounts. So it isn't something we can sort of run the same old plays to. or to the same people we're currently working with. So from a business objective standpoint, we're looking at creating expansion pipeline in these accounts, as well as, again, overall net retention to see what sort of impact we're making. And from a program strategy perspective, we're going to start small so we can work with our customer success and our sales teams, for example, to identify top 50, top 100 customers. And those accounts could be identified through kind of a variety of criteria. It could be purely overall contract value. It could be customers that you have been with you for the longest, or maybe even have high CSAT or net promoter scores, or it could be totally subjective and your CSMs could pick their top 5 customers that are either the most successful or are the happiest. So again, similar to our retention program, we need to get in front of new personas. So new contacts added will be a metric that we want to track and understand to see if we're engaging that new audience. We're also going to run, for example, a targeted event or a targeted lunch and learn to educate these new personas. And our existing users will look at overall attendees as well as new pipeline influenced for ops related to this new product in these customer accounts. So once again, excuse me, water break. A lot of talking, but hopefully you guys are sticking with me. But since we're looking to get in front of new people that might not be familiar with us at existing accounts or engaging with us yet, display advertising will also help us drive awareness. Again, kind of going back to that full life cycle, driving awareness in these accounts. We're also going to use, again, we could use something like a website chatbot to drive new contacts to our website so that they can either engage with specific content in the chatbot related to this new product, or maybe we decide to even route them directly to our customer success or our sales team, depending on what kind of engagement they're looking to have with us. And we can also do things like follow-up email campaigns from our lunch and learn to keep people engaged and interested after the fact. So from a channel perspective, we'll look at things like email click-through rate, total chat conversations from our customer accounts, and overall engagement rate kind of with these channels and these assets we're creating to really assess overall effectiveness. All right, so I've talked your ear off, but some final takeaways that I have here for you. If you're going to remember 4 things from this session, let it be these 4 things. First and foremost is you have to understand your data availability and accuracy to run programs like these. So data, like a lot of programs, is critical to identifying the right accounts, understanding who's in market and who's a good fit for your business, when you should activate on specific plays. And you really can't measure anything without data, right? So first and foremost, also understanding your own readiness and doing kind of that self-assessment exercise throughout your entire funnel to really understand where there are gaps or where there are strengths, and really what can you optimize, what you can work towards to scale and get to that next level or run those programs that really matter most to your business. The third thing is that it's okay to start small with programs like these. You don't have to boil the ocean out of the gate. Ultimately, you have to anchor around business objectives, program metrics, channel KPIs that really matter most to you and to your business. So starting small is okay, but remember that you have to focus on those 3 things. And also some advice here would be to build a scorecard to really create a visibility and accountability across your team, but also your entire go-to-market team, anyone that's involved in these programs, so that you can really develop kind of a single source of truth that everyone can track against, everyone can access, because without that visibility, it can, again, be really hard to get buy-in and prove that these programs are having an impact to the larger business. So again, 4 takeaways. Hopefully you were able to glean at least those things from this. It looks like we do have some time for Q&A. So I'm going to pop into Q&A and see what we have going there. I'll try to look through chat as well. But if you have questions now, or if you've already asked them, feel free and I will dive in. So looking at the chat, oops. Jamie, I saw that the link didn't come through. Let me try to pop it into the chat again for that full funnel metric asset. Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Michael. That's awesome to hear. I actually do have one question to address here, which is I'm going to answer it live. Who or what role do you recommend to own data cleanliness? That is a great question. So thank you for asking that. I think what I would say is, first and foremost, I would argue that it is everyone's job to own data cleanliness. Ultimately, if you have a CRM administrator or a data operations person, those roles are obviously more geared towards creating good data practices and data cleanliness. Marketing ops, your Salesforce administrator, again, or your CRM administrator. But I also think it's really important that those roles and program or discipline leaders, marketing leaders, sales leaders, it needs to come from the top down. So not only do you need to have people to put those processes in place, but you need people to enforce them. So I would argue that you also need your sales and marketing leaders, customer success leaders bought in on data cleanliness to enforce those. You need salespeople, you need marketing people to help you maintain data. So that's kind of a roundabout answer to say you need people that are dedicated to that, obviously, but you also need it to be a business level initiative to really enforce and keep those practices going. Okay, good. We're doing good on time. Thank you for everyone that's putting questions in here. So Marianne asked, how do you fight the old school instinct to measure MQLs and apples to apples comparisons to other marketing programs? Marianne, I love this question. We get this question a lot. And I would say, first and foremost, that's a common challenge that we run into as an account-based marketing company. Absolutely. I think, when you've been measured against something for one way for years and years, or, there are KPIs that your boss cares about that are more MQL or lead centric. I think that's okay. I think what's important to keep in mind when you're running programs like this is setting expectations ahead of time. So getting leadership buy-in at the onset and agreeing on these metrics before you even run anything is super important. So I think that understanding that MQLs and leads have a place for measurement, and ultimately they could have a place in an account-based program, right? The lens is different though. You're looking at driving leads from accounts that you care about and that you've self-selected ahead of time. And I think it's also keeping in mind that leads generated in MQLs, demos, requests, content downloads, that's all part of that channel metric conversation, right? You still need to understand if your channels are working. So those metrics won't necessarily go away, but I think overall with ABM, the goal is to tie back everything that you're doing in marketing, in sales, wherever you sit, to opportunities and revenue created. And really what I would say is whoever you're reporting to, your CEO, your CMO, your CFO, those are ultimately the metrics that they care about. They don't actually probably really care about how many leads you've generated, right? They want to know what impact marketing is having on pipeline and revenue. So again, I think it's setting expectations at the top end, understanding where those metrics fit. Measuring ABM programs based on lead volume will get you back to kind of that age-old traditional metric or traditional measurement strategy pretty fast because it doesn't really fit. But also just really trying to drive back and tie back to pipeline and revenue and using the right tools and the right data to help get you that insight. All right, we have one. I'll try to answer these last two questions that we have here, but Rob asked, if you were hiring for an ABM role today, what are the top 3 skills that you would look at for an applicant? This is a great question, Rob. I actually personally have not hired an ABM role, but I can speak to kind of what we look for at Terminus. I think it has to be someone that is really good at building cross-functional relationships. Again, these are programs that you can't run in a silo. You need sales. If you're running post-sale ABM plays, you need customer success involved. You need leadership approval from the top down. So people that are really good at building cross-functional relationships, especially with a sales or a marketing counterpart, is super crucial. I think that people that are also metrics driven and first and foremost understand kind of how to tie back to pipeline and revenue is really crucial. And I would also say, people that have experience, with kind of that multi-channel approach or have run kind of different programs at different stages of the life cycle and aren't, I think absolutely people that have come from demand gen solely can succeed in programs like this, but people that understand how to tailor messaging to different types of buyers and different life cycle stages and have experience running programs like that can be super crucial in a role like that. And I think last but not least, I know we're at time, you guys, too. If you have to jump, no worries. Thank you so much for the participation. But the question was, what cadence do you recommend with sales teams in enterprise level organizations? And I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, I think it's kind of like how often should you be communicating with sales? But the question might also be what the cadence should be for sales reaching out to accounts at the enterprise level. So I don't know if anyone can clarify on that, but I would say overall, in terms of communicating with sales and sales cadences, I think that, it really depends on size of your organization and how your teams are structured. So you might have, different tiers or different verticals that you're working with, but I think biweekly, monthly sales and marketing cadences are huge and super important. Overall, like just talk to sales talk to marketing as often as possible, share data, share insights. Don't just send them an email once a week, really set time to get to know them individually, get to know the leaders, share data, get their feedback, give your feedback to them as often as possible. It's not enough to just share content assets out with them and write cadences for them. I think it has to go beyond that. And so hopefully that was the direction the question was going. But again, I know we're over time and you guys have other great sessions to get to. So thank you everyone so much. Thank you for the great participation. Again, in a couple of weeks, Mojo will be following up with slides as well as recordings for these if there's anything you want to go back onto, but please feel free to connect with me. I'm just Brenna Zanotti on LinkedIn. Connect with me if you have any other questions. I'm always happy to chat. And thank you guys so much again.